Hey, what's up, my Keto Challengers? It's Coach R coming to you at the end of our day 9. I can't believe we've got one day left of our 10-day keto challenge. And congratulations to our keto rebooters. You guys are almost done. You're pretty much there. It's the home stretch. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I will say go to sleep early, call it an early night so that you could wake up in the morning and you can check that box off that you just completed the 60-hour keto reboot. So that's a really great segue because our topic for today is very fitting with the reboot. It kind of goes hand in hand. And what I'm going to talk about is sleep and making sure that we get an adequate amount of sleep. Whether we believe it or not, stress has the capacity to help us and aid us in our weight loss and wellness journey. We already know what sleep can do from a stress perspective, but what can it do from a weight loss perspective? Okay, so it's actually very interconnected and it's very easy to understand once we break it down. So let's break it down so we know what exactly we are up against, okay? So when we don't get enough sleep and or we are stressed, our body responds to the same situation by releasing the same hormone, and that hormone is cortisol. So when we don't get enough sleep, our bodies are actually in a slight state of stress, which means that we are pumping out cortisol. And what you might not know is that cortisol and insulin have a very parallel relationship. When one is high, the other one is high. So with that high cortisol, you also get high insulin. And we've already talked about the repercussions of high insulin is that it is in fat storage mode. It's doing its job number 2. So what scientists have also shown is that high levels of cortisol affect the receptors of our cell membranes, making them unable to receive glucose for energy. Interesting. So what else happens when our cell receptors on our membranes do not or no longer receive glucose for energy? We talked about prediabetes and diabetes is when our cells are no longer responsive to the insulin or the high amounts of insulin in our bodies, and your cells become insulin resistant because there's too much glucose in our body. When cortisol levels are high, it interestingly enough elicits a temporary insulin resistance response in our body. So you are temporarily pre-diabetic or diabetic. Isn't that weird? When we don't get enough sleep. So this is what happens when we don't get enough sleep. Our bodies are in a constant state of fat storage and we are in a slight stage of pre-diabetes. Isn't that just crazy? Cortisol also affects another hormone. And if you can't tell already, our bodies are managed by the levels of different hormones. And the other hormone that it affects is ghrelin. And ghrelin is our appetite hormone. It tells us to eat. And it doesn't tell us just to eat anything. It tells us to eat carbohydrates, rich, sugary foods. Why? Because we talked about this. Carbohydrates and sugars are broken down into glucose, and glucose is the easiest, fastest available energy. So that is what your body makes you crave, is the fastest form of energy it can metabolize, and that would be glucose. But do you now see how we are stuck in this unending cycle of your body is making you eat carbohydrates and sugars, but your blood sugars might be getting a little bit dangerously too high. And when your blood sugars are high, then your cells are no longer accepting any of the glucose to be created into energy. So insulin keeps getting pumped out, and insulin is high because it's trying to do its first job, but eventually has to do its second job, right? And then you couple that with not enough sleep, and then your cortisol levels are high, which then exasperates the insulin being high and it affects your ghrelin. So it's this unending cycle of eating carbs and glucose, metabolizing the sugars, and not being able to create energy for your body. And if you don't already know, glucose actually binds to the same cell receptors in our brains as opiates and drugs, okay? So glucose gives us a release of serotonin and endorphins. So when your body is in a slight state of stress, it is requiring some serotonin, some dopamine, okay, release from our body. And what is the best way to do that is to eat sugary foods, right? So our body is stuck once we are dependent on carbohydrates and sugars. However, on a low carb ketogenic diet, our body has learned how to utilize the alternate form of energy, right? The ancestral form of energy, which is ketones. So then your body is not stuck in a state or an unending loop of carbohydrate consumption, metabolic dysfunction from our cells and our cellular receptor perspective. Sleep is important. Stress management is important. This is how it can affect your weight loss from a negative perspective. You could be doing everything right from a diet, from an exercise perspective, but if you're not getting enough sleep or if you're not managing your stress, you could actually be sabotaging your weight loss journey. So don't do that. Get some sleep. And tonight, call it an early night. Read a book. Put the kids to bed early. My kids should actually be sleeping already. I hear them downstairs. But go to bed early, call it a night, and make sure that you are making sleep and stress management a priority from this point forward in your wellness journey, okay? Don't sabotage yourself. Get it done because you deserve it and you can totally do it. All right, that's day 9. Tomorrow's day 10, and we're done. We're gonna be done with the whole challenge tomorrow. I'm gonna talk about our tip for tomorrow, which is also an interesting one. A lot of people kind of raise their eyebrow when I talk about it, but it's a good one. And then we'll talk about what is life after the 10-day challenge. All right, folks, have a good evening. Have a good Tuesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Go to sleep. Good night. Bye-bye.